All right. More on my stance of the internals. Okay, so again, remember the whole point of the art is it's a practice. It's a technology of self, and its whole orientation and its whole agenda, its aim is divine communion. End of story. Because it was developed in a culture that used a concentric epistemology, the manner in which you gain divine communion, the manner in which is also true, and hence as true, it manifests in things like fighting. But fighting is not our goal. You can win at fights outside of this truth and outside of the means in which divine communion is made possible. So the whole point of the internal aspects, simplified in my system, is just Aiki and Kokyu, a communing aspect and a separating aspect. The whole point of them is not to make you martially invincible. Are you better off tactically having them in your toolkit? Yes. Than not having them? Yes. Will they make you invincible? No. What they do, however, is the mechanisms by which the internals are manifested is the very mechanisms by which the obstruction to divine communion is deconstructed. That is, the method in which Aiki and Kokyu are manifested is dependent upon the deconstruction of the ego tripartite mind. The ego tripartite mind is the final obstruction to divine communion. Toward this end, Chi is not a physical substance. It is not a magical substance. I would say it's a metaphysical concept describing the very deconstruction of that ego tripartite mind itself, another metaphysical concept. When Aiki and Kokyu are used tactically, they function just like any other physical force would function. Because Chi is not a substance and Chi is not magical, it does not do something that other physical forces do not do. The difference is, how are they manifested? They are not manifested by the physical processes by which other physical forces are manifested. They are manifested, yes, physically, but the means is metaphysically. And that's the difference. So this is where I don't agree with other proponents I have put before you, such as Adam Misner or Damo Mitchell. They're playing around with physical substances. I did a analysis of Damo Mitchell's physicality, and it's just stupid, okay? And anyone should see that it makes no sense. But anybody who knows the cultural history, as I do and as they don't, you would know that's inconsistent with the historical record. That's not what they mean at all. So now, question was raised, how do you do Aiki with the Jo, as in Jo Dori? As my first response is, you do it the same way you do Aiki all the time. Aiki is just is going to manifest physically, but it's going to be generated metaphysically. And you could look at our weapons work where my sword will stick to the other person's sword. That's Aiki. That's the adhesion. That's the communion. And that's two inanimate objects with very low friction value, able to stick together. Jo Dori should be even easier because the friction value goes up on one of the elements, the other person's grab. But we can make two swords, a Jo and a sword, two Jo stick together. That is adhesion, that is communion. Likewise, we have video of weapon on weapon where I project the person through the weapon. It's the same, it's not different. I think the question arises because we haven't yet fully accepted that while Aiki and Kokyu are metaphysically generated, they manifest physically, and as they manifest physically, they function just like any other physical force. There's no magic to them, okay? So you have to go back and understand more clearly my overall position, here quickly said, and the demonstrations that I use to note those differences. But here I'll do a little kind of primer video to show you something that people may have missed, okay, on this topic. Okay, so we'll do one of the Aiki drills, the beginning Aiki drills, where she has her arms crossed, okay? And she lifts up her arms in the Aiki cultivation set number 1. Okay. And the way that I describe it is the communion will arise when the yang value of this movement is matched by my yang value, okay? So hence equal yang. What makes up her yang value? Her inertia. That her inertia is she's standing, okay? Combined with her gravity, her materiality, her mass, all of those energy aspects, plus her movement going up. If I match that, I can work at a 90-degree fluctuating angle and move her forward, okay? So as, just wait a second. As she goes up, I match that, and then I get that adhesion right there. She'll feel it first before you see it, and that's what moves her. Let's come really close and maybe get on this side. So this adhesion is really just another type of friction. It's just friction is what it is, okay? So the friction is going to manifest in the slack of whatever's there. So especially if you're not quite at the perfect yang value. So I will not do a perfect yang value, and you will see her skin will move as she starts to do the exercise. So there is that skin right there. Do you see? So I'm moving her skin. And then I can just stay there until this pulls. She's leaning back on me, but that's just yang value, and I have to adapt to it. So did you feel yourself lean back? Okay, so what happens is normally, I want to talk about that moment because I'm still teaching my people, is that's a reaction to the pull, but the uke does not seek control, okay? So what happened was as she starts to lift, and I generate that friction, she felt herself go off balance, and she shifted her weight to the back, and you see that increases the yang value when she's doing that. If I don't stay up with it and I try to pull, I'll slip off, okay? So, and she'll fall backwards, okay? But as she goes, and I'll have her do it again, and I just keep matching it, and there's more pull on her skin, do you see? And then eventually I can pull her without slipping off. Got it? Okay, but you, I don't want you to do that stuff, okay? All right, so you have to be fine with losing control of what's going on. All right. Some people will find this very easy, and some people won't. The people that can ground vector and take all of this yang aspect and orient it towards the ground, they can do this at lighter levels of yang aspect. The people that can't, they require higher levels of yang aspect, grosser levels. Okay, so I'm not going to ground at all. I'm just standing here, and as she goes really slowly, I'm never going to get that. You'll see that a lot. If she goes and I don't ground, I can't internalize, and she goes up, I can generate higher levels of yang in mine, you see? And she tries to lift up, and I push down, and now I can move that thing forward. Do you see that? But if I can internalize everything, we won't even use this movement. Okay? There's enough yang aspect here, and you can see you gotta, I don't know, talk on how light my touch is.
Very light.
Okay, it's very light, but you can see that you can get it to go, okay? Does that make sense? Okay, it's crazy, okay? And that is possible because I can internalize this yang aspect and get this third point into the equation of her yang aspect, my yang aspect, and then there's this third point through the internal, through grounding through me, okay? And that is what I call alchemically treated yang. This is just yang, me shoving down and trying to bring it forward. But alchemically treated yang is yang that is bounced back off the ground, and then this could be so light, and you could get it to work. Even in weird places, okay? Now, here there's not really a ledge there anyways, if you think about it. I'm not on the inside, okay? But you can do it on places where you can't even really think that you can do it. So I'll release. Don't lean back on me. And you can get it to go. So if you pay attention, you still will see the friction. I'll generate the friction, okay? And you'll feel it, okay? What you're going to feel is I'm using the up of your yang aspect, you see? I'm not here in front, and it's magic chi, and I pull this. There is the up. Do you feel it right there? Okay, so you can make it go back. We're just making it go forward. So now I have it, and then we go forward with the up. Again, it always occurs at a 90 degree to her resistance, her yang aspect, okay? So, let's stop there. All right, so I asked my deshi here, because, I'm teaching them to tell me something that the alchemically treated yang can do that just straight yang can't do. And Virginia noted something I did not say, which is very true, but she feels it, is the straight blast yang is really doing the skin suit pulling, where it's just working on the joints, it's not in the center. So for those who don't know, it's like I just shove this down and then I can move her. You create that friction, okay? Whereas the other one, the alchemically treated, is always kind of locks everything and she feels it more from this part, which is where I'm trying to move her from. I'm not trying to move her arms, kind of thing, okay? Very, very true. And that's how you seize the center. So even when I'm here and I do this, then I'm already in her center at that point. You're in her center, which you cannot be when you just kind of shove and generate friction through this contestation and then you move them. You don't really have their center in that seizure sense, okay? But the second thing that you can do is you can work with extremely light levels of yang, okay, which means tactically you can now respond through seizure much earlier in the person's offense, which is much better to do, okay? That was my point, that you could work with lower yang values, extremely low, to the point where you are now at weird edges that still function in terms of equalized yang meeting each other, still generates the communion, the friction, making 2-1, but in weird ways that the other physical understandings just can't manifest, okay? It's not, I'm not pulling her when I bring her forward with her skin on the front. I'm not doing that. That's not what's happening, okay? So another tool in the toolkit. Chris asked the question, why does it do that? Why does it allow you to generate either a contact point, an adhesion point where there's no ledge, or at extremely low values of yang? Why does it let you do that? Why does alchemically treated yang let you do that? And to tell you the honest truth, I don't know. I have no idea. If I were to theorize, I think it has something to do, in part, with just the physiological aspect of having a third force value in the equation. I think it radically alters the equation where you have her energy, I have my energy, and now I have this third point. And I think when we think about this, only hers and mine at the contact point, we can't see all the mathematical possibilities. Well, we're missing the huge portion that's also involved in the equation. I think that's there. I also think that there's a spiritual aspect to it, that I can feel more what she's doing. Where is this yang value? Where is her yang value? I'm more sensitive to that information. And so I can respond accordingly, as described, much earlier, much lighter, just because I'm more aware of what she's actually doing, where her body is, where her center is. I'm actually aware of all of that kind of stuff. So part of it is, I think there's a third equation point in there that goes from the feet all the way through the tanden that is producing other kind of force values into this equation. But two, I think my awareness of what her information is, what's her yang value, where is it located, is much higher in terms of its readability and sensitivity. And so I can do things at more subtle levels, not requiring gross amplification of her yang value to do things, okay? Here's one more thing the alchemically treated yang does, and it's related to this increase in awareness. It drops that ego tripartite mind, which is always issuing a kind of blindness because it always filters everything through the reification of the self, where the other is experienced as threat or no threat, and that leads to blindness. So as you are doing the energy, so as she has her value there, as I just not even moving her and I get into that, I can feel that whole threat experience just drop into my mind. And it does feel like a drop, which is the old expression. It just feels like it's going down. And that's what you're playing with in this exercise. So to me, this could be the drill. This could be the drill. Like, I already felt the mind drop, which is also why I can do that with my own yang aspect. I can do the standing release drills, and you'll feel the mind drop. And that does not happen with trying to shove her down and generate enough contestation that these two things get stuck together. In fact, the opposite happens. Okay? That's why big man Aikido is antithetical to true Aikido. True Aikido drops the ego tripartite mind. Big man Aikido rises it. Okay? All right, so if she has now the same drill, okay, and we start at the bottom, it's the same principle, okay? Her skin is going to give a little more friction than her gi. Do you feel the difference? Okay, but not much. It's not much, right? So you can see that her skin kind of moves a little, just a little, with the weight of the weapon, and then there's a little, but it's less, and it is sliding over her skin. So there's less friction on her physical. There's more friction here, do you see, with the weight of my hand, because there's more friction in these two surfaces than over here. But it doesn't change in terms of what it's doing, okay? That just means there's going to be less yang value at the contact point because there's less friction. Friction is a yang value. So, but the principle is the same. So I have to internalize all of this, let it all sink, and as she lifts up, I just am kind of matching it. She doesn't lift up, there'll be less yang value, which just means I have to match it at a lower value. Okay? Nothing changes except, right, what you can do and can't do. Does that make sense? Of course, you could do the same thing. I shove it way down here and then I pull it, but because I'm only in the arms, you eventually lose control of the center as the skin suit adjusts. Okay? But you could make them move that way. Okay? And in this sense, you want her to move that way. It's a physical property, just like this is a physical property. It's just we understand that physical property. But I would say if you wanted to make this a purely physical property, it would be the property of friction. That's what you're doing. You're generating friction between two objects. It's not uncommon the way that launch control on modern cars won't let you accelerate past the friction that your tires can provide. That is pretty much what I'm doing here. Okay? If I go faster than her yang value, I'll never stick. If I'm underneath it, we're not going to go anywhere either. I have to match it perfectly. Okay? The way launch control is working in terms of adhesion goes. In terms of Kokyu projection, okay? So Kokyu projection is the alchemically treated yang that I emit out is greater than the yang value at the contact point. Then she gets separated. She gets displaced, okay? So when I'm here like this, and I have equal value, so you can see her skin. Her skin is being moved. Okay, I'm holding it right at the edge of her center. And for me to project, I just have to increase the yang value. Boom. Okay? That's all we're doing there. So if she is holding the Jo, yeah, okay? You have to feel where that yang value is, and then you have to do higher yang value. So it's not going to be going this way in that elbow joint where her elbow joint can move. You see? You have to figure out where it is. So I kind of went into that joint. She can feel that. And then from in that joint, once I'm in that joint, then I can come around towards her center and get her to move. Okay? So if I go that way, you see you're in the joint. And what the first thing I did was I feel the yang, her yang value. Okay? There's that thing is locked now. Okay? So, for example, stay there. I'm going to change my angle and keep it there. Okay? I keep that same thing, and I'm in her center, and you can kind of just keep it going, and you'll move her with the Aiki. Okay? You increase it, boom, you'll get the projection that's going there. Okay? It doesn't change. We're here, boom, pop. Keep it in there, and you can move her around. Okay, doesn't change. Nothing changes. Okay. Keep that in mind, and then we'll do something else. Let me hear your questions as you're going. You should have a lot of questions because this is quite different from everything else that I've seen out there. Every single thing that I've seen out there. I have seen, just as you have, people adhere and people project, but the understanding in my mind, the discourse on understanding it, always veers from the historical record and always brings a machine-like materiality to the explanations, which is also veering from the historical record, and also deprioritizes what is the ultimate prioritization, which is the dropping or the deconstruction of the ego tripartite mind, which is the obstruction to divine communion.